Central Securities Clearance System Limited declares a dividend of 3.7 billion naira to shareholders. We will train your youth on modern farming techniques, Israel and Morocco tells Nigeria. Reform tax systems to optimize revenue collection for inclusive growth. And Nigeria makes $565.5 million in crude oil and gas sales. This is Business Express coming to you on the network service of the NTA. I am Musa Abubakar. Now let's bring you up to speed with business development. The Central Securities Clearance System Limited, CSCS, has declared a dividend of 3.7 billion naira to shareholders, representing 83.7% payout ratio for the year ending December 2021. Chairman Nigeria Exchange Group Oscar Oyema said, despite moderation in capital flows as reflected in capital market activities, the earnings fundamentals of the company maintain a resilient performance. Details will come your way in the course of the program. In view of global challenges confronting the economy, Nigeria and India are making new moves to attract investment for the mutual benefits of the two countries. This was at the 7th Raisina dialogue in New Delhi, where the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Oyema, called for stronger ties between Nigeria and India and says the African Continental Free Trade Area is a game changer that is going to be the largest free trade area in the world and make doing business much easier for countries with seamless access to 54 markets. He also spoke on the role of Africa in the upcoming world in terms of trade, cooperation and partnership, especially with the Africa's Asia partners and India as a special partner. The minister was sharing his thoughts on how India and Africa can work together to foster further connectivity and commerce, noted that Nigeria and India have had a long history of very close cooperation and people-to-people relations with generations of Indian families living in Nigeria, Nigerian students in India and in the military establishments. Looking at India as the second largest producer of steel in the world, Oyema said Nigeria will collaborate closely with India to achieve industrialization action plan through Continental Framework of India-Africa Summit. In the meantime, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has sympathized with the government and people of Nigeria over the recent illegal oil refinery deaths in Imo State. Now, Israel and Morocco have agreed to train Nigerian youths on modern farming techniques under the National Young Farmer Scheme. Musa Aliu reports that the scheme was introduced under the National Agricultural Lands Development Authority.
Israel is ranked among the world's best when it comes to irrigation farming techniques, while Morocco is among the best in animal husbandry. It is in the light of this that Nigeria went into partnership with the two countries to train her youths. 200 farmers and agriculture entrepreneurs from the 32 states have been selected to go to Israel for the training.
So our aggressive farming also is a program that the youth of Nigeria should buy into, because it's for the Nigeria and Nigerians, and by extension, our neighboring states. Because when we have enough, we'll begin to export more. We are already exporting, but we have to export more.
Hassan Atiku and Ifunaya Ekot are among the 200 farmers who have received their traveling documents for the Israel trip.
I'm very happy that I'm one of the beneficiaries to this trip. And I want to appreciate the effort of the president by bringing youth to farming, because building the youth is building the nation.
I believe educating, if we know the right ways to do things, then the practicing, doing it well would be easy. So coming back, it would be to shed light, shed more information, solid information on what we have seen and what we have learned.
This opportunity will help me to acquire more knowledge about farm and to improve my own farm business. And now to help me to encourage and engage my fellow youth, to train them and to tell them what farm is all about so that they can go back to farm.
The National Youth Farmer Scheme was last year inaugurated by President Muhammadu Buhari as part of strategy towards encouraging the unemployed to pick interest in agriculture. Musa Aliyu.
Nigeria and her ECOWAS partners will need to reform tax systems, optimize revenue collection, and pay attention to inclusive growth to deal with debt sustainability concerns. These are some of the recommendations at the formal launch and dissemination of the Debt Management, Restructuring and Sustainability in the ECOWAS Region Report. Lekatun Babatunde reports.
Been facing rising debt levels since the COVID-19 pandemic started, a trend that has been further exacerbated by the war between Russia and Ukraine. Concerns about debt sustainability and the need for restructuring have been stronger for sub-Saharan Africa due to high debt service costs when compared to revenues. The Debt Management Roundtable is on the back of an 18-month study that seeks to find practical policy solutions to growing debt concerns in the ECOWAS region.
The main concern with higher debt loads, particularly in ECOWAS, is in its ability to create macroeconomic instability. High domestic debt crowds out investment for the private sector, while the high cost of debt service channels revenue away from productive investments in the economy.
West Africa's revenue to GDP ratio is 19.3%. Nigeria presently hovers around 9%, with government targeting 15% already planned in the Strategic Revenue Growth Initiative and Finance Acts.
Place a sharper focus on domestic resource mobilization, which is the same as generating revenue. From what sources? How do we increase taxes? Can we improve by getting more compliance?
The overall message is, let us pay more attention to economic growth, particularly inclusive growth. Can we have macroeconomic stability?
The roundtable, among other things, is proposing ways ECOWAS member states can strengthen debt quality and ensure sustainable debt levels over the long term.
Now, debt concerns globally have heightened with both the World Bank and the IMF at the just concluded spring meetings devoting sessions to converse on debts. Balazaka is an economy analyst and joins me to look at the debt sustainability concerns in Nigeria and the ECOWAS. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you.
Okay. The IMF projects in its World Economic Outlook for April 2022 that the average debt to GDP ratio in West Africa is expected to rise to 67.2% in 2022 from 56.4% in 2019. Is this a source of worry?
Yes, for all economic watchers, for nations, especially within the continent of Africa and the West African sub-region in particular, this is a cause for concern. But on the flip side, the region has everything it takes to reverse this ratio. because we are just talking about ballooning debt. Meanwhile, we are having shrinking GDP. But we have what it takes to build the GDP, grow the GDP such that the ratio will, instead of going up towards 67%, can start coming down from 54, or from 56 towards probably a 40%, and even a 30 or even 20. It is possible because we have everything it takes to grow our gross domestic products. We have the investment. If we want to invest, we can invest properly. We can also build our balance of trade. We can also do something about our consumption index. By the time you build them up, definitely the debt to GDP ratio, overall value or overall percentage will eventually come down. It is a cause for concern for sure, but as Africans, or as West Africa, or as Nigeria, we have what it takes to bring down the debt to GDP ratio.
Okay, that Nigeria accounts for 50% and 67% of the region's total debts and GDP. How do we marry this, considering the huge gap between revenue and debts?
It can be looked from two different perspectives. When you look at the debts, Nigeria's debt is almost like 50%, but we can ask questions to know the components of the debt and then take practical steps on what to do about them. Then when we look at also the GDP, it is 60%. We can ask practical questions and see how we can build the GDP. Because as I speak to you right now, most of the problems we are experiencing within the West African sub-region or within Nigeria are actually, man-made concerns. They are not natural disasters. We don't have tsunamis. We don't experience tornadoes. We don't experience desert fires. We don't experience mud avalanche. So we don't even experience natural disasters. So they are man-made concerns. And if we can come together in regional interest and in the interest of Nigeria this time around in national interest, we can do something about the man-made concerns.
Well, is widening the tax net something that we can use to address this problem?
Most of the time when we talk about revenue generation, we are always looking at widening the tax net. But to be honest and to be fair to the taxpayers, a greater percentage of those who are supposed to be paying taxes are actually paying already. It's only the few artisans that are not paying. What we should look at is to look at indices or variables that will make individual and corporate investors to be able to generate more so that they can comply with their civic responsibilities of paying taxes and levies. And some of the variables we need to look at are variables like security. If we do something about security, more investors will come in and more investors will invest in the urban areas and in the cities. If we do something about insecurity, people can go back to the farms. When people go back to the farms, there will be sufficiency in agriculture. When we do something about energy, then investors, whether they are individual or corporate investors, will be able to generate more. Then before you know, their profit before tax will be high and their taxes will be high. Immediately we're able to do that, I bet you our GDPs will come up. Because as I speak to you now, look at the cost of diesel, for example, and look at how it is affecting all the strategic sectors. When you look at it from that angle, you will know that if they are affected due to energy supplies, it will affect their profit before tax. And if it affects their profit before tax, then the company income tax will go down. And if some of them decide to lay off staff, then what we call personal income tax will go down. Then tax that the country or the region will get from manufacturing that we call excise duties will also go down. So we need to take care of security, take care of energy, and make sure also we provide credits or loans that are redeemable or payable.
Okay, you talked about taking care of security, energy, and quite obvious the COVID effects are still here, supply shocks and energy volatility still persist. What is your take on debt sustainability?
I'm more interested in debt redemption or debt reduction, because it is not a good thing to keep compiling debts. And even if you have high debts, don't be proud to want to keep sustaining the debts. So we should be focused towards debt redemption or debt reduction. Because when you reduce debt, then you will be improving profitability. When you improve profitability, you will be encouraging economic growth. But you will not stop at that. By the time you grow the economy, then you will now start encouraging national development and regional development. Because it is from the development that we are going to grow and GDP will go up. So, and like I said, if we do something about security, definitely we are going to boost the GDP, because a lot of people will be secured. People will go back to the farms. Most importantly, energy. Let us do something about energy. In the case of Nigeria, for instance, we have natural gas that we can use to drive gas turbines and generate electricity. The moment you generate electricity, the deregulation of diesel will not mean anything. The deregulation of price of aviation fuel or kerosene will not mean much. So, and from that natural gas alone, you can also get ammonia. From ammonia, you will get urea. From urea, you will get fertilizer. That fertilizer can be used to boost food security in Nigeria. It will boost food security in the West African sub-region and even within the continent of Africa. So whichever way you look at it, most of the problems within the continent of Africa or the West African sub-region or within Nigeria are actually internal problems that have to do with planning.
Okay.
Natural disasters, we can fix them.
Okay. Before I let you go now, the proposed 10-point action plan include integrated strategy for revenue optimization, expenditure efficiency, and debt management. How can this be optimized in the short run, especially knowing that Nigeria is in an election year?
The first thing I want to say is I want to appreciate the team that came up with those plans. I mean, those points they itemize are worthy of praise and emulation. All they need to do is to match the plan with practical action. Once there are practical actions and implementation action, most importantly in national interest, we are going to reap the benefits and the dividends. Then, regardless of election, we should always understand that elections will come and go. The countries will remain.
Okay.
And even those who are going to be the politicians, let them play their elections in national interest.
Okay.
The most important thing is we want to get leaders that will lead Nigeria and also end up leading the West African sub-region and the continent of Africa for us.
Okay.
The whole of Africa is looking up to Nigeria to lead.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Balazaka. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
Now, moving the Central Securities Clearance System Limited, CSCS, has declared a dividend of 3.7 billion naira to shareholders, representing 83.7% payout ratio for the year ending December 2021. Chairman, Nigeria Exchange Group, Oscar Oyema, said despite moderation in capital flows as reflected in capital market activities, the earnings fundamentals of the company maintain a resilient performance. Abulhadi Islami reports.
Consolidating on its earnings diversification drive, the Central Security Clearing System grew revenue from corporations and auxiliary services by 39.2% to 6.4 billion naira from 4.8 billion in the year 2020, just as it almost quadrupled earnings from auxiliary services from 526 million naira in 2020 to 2.2 billion naira in 2021 financial year. While the market recorded one of its weakest secondary market activities in the past few years, with an average daily trade value of 3.9 billion naira, representing 10% below the trading activities recorded in 2020 financial year, the company appreciated in revenue growth by 39.2%, driven by stellar performance in auxiliary income.
Important thing to note is that our revenues from operations this year was about 6 billion as compared to revenues from operations last year of about 4 billion, even though we had a total revenue of 12 billion last year. And that has to do with the fact that we took advantage of market conditions.
As the infrastructure for the Nigerian capital market, the Central Security Clearance System has pioneered a number of initiatives and efficiencies in the market towards positioning the Nigerian exchange as the hub of securities services in Africa.
If you recall why the CSCS was set up, I remember back in the day, it used to be that brokers came on Fridays and exchanged checks. Now, if I was holding money and I didn't have the cash, I would not show up on Friday. So to remove the counterparty risk that existed between participants, the CSCS was formed and it automated the system of settlement.
In deepening the market and strengthening business growth frontier for prosperity of shareholders, management of the equity market says strategic trust focused on development on medium-term plan will be prioritized.
Well, it is a positive wrap on the Nigerian Stock Exchange for 6th May 2022 as the NGX All-Share Index closed 50,935.09 basis point with market capitalization at 27.4 billion naira. Trillion naira. 466.2 volume of shares exchange hands in 7,442, value at 5.308 billion naira. Next is the global stocks market with Ineka.
Hello and welcome to the global market segment. Let's begin from Asia, where stocks closed mixed this Friday after an overnight drop on Wall Street sent the Dow Jones Industrial Average to its worst day since 2020. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index led losses with a 3.81% drop to close at 20,001.96. The Shanghai Composite in China also depreciated by 2.16%, while in Japan the Nikkei 225 gained 0.69%. In Europe, stocks retreated, tracking global caution after Wall Street posted its worst day since 2020. Germany's DAX fell 1.31%, London's FTSE also declined 0.84%, and CAC 40 of France depreciated by 1.09%. U.S. stocks traded lower in early deals ahead of the closely watched April jobs report. Futures on the Dow Jones Industrial Average were down 0.16%, S&P 500 dropped 0.27%, and Nasdaq 100 sank 0.35%. Just like other stocks across the globe, markets on the African continent also plunged this Friday, completely erasing their gains from previous sessions. South Africa led losses with a 2.4% decrease. Kenya lost 1.15%, while Tunisia, Namibia, and Ghana were also in negative territory. And that's Global Market Review. I am Neka Uko.
On that note, let's take a trip to the commodities markets. Now let's see how the naira is exchanging for other currencies. Well, that's it. Business Express returns Monday. I am Musa Abubakar.